Hello and welcome to today's episode of Winning Mentality. My name is Daniel Cutright and super excited to have our guest, Dr. Brian Prax of Chronic Care Charlottesville, chiropractor here in the Charlottesville area, joining us today. Brian, how you doing?
I'm having a fantastic day, Daniel. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Super excited about this. And I ran into you in the gym actually a few months back and resparked the conversation. It's been a few years and just got to talk about some of your work and the areas that you're specializing in. You recently wrote a book. Since I had last talked to you back in 2018, you published Reversing Neuropathy. Is that right?
Yeah, reversing neuropathy, making the impossible possible.
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. And that's a great tagline because when people hear that, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but they're probably thinking reversing neuropathy. That's something that I've heard is not reversible, but clearly you have shown that's not the case. And you've had some success in that area. And I definitely want to dive into that a little bit. My understanding when I think in the field of chiropractic is I grew up going to a traditional physician. My thoughts about, when I think of a chiropractor is somebody strapping me down to a table, cracking my back, readjusting me, things like that. But obviously the field is much more than that. So maybe start us off by just talking a little bit about the field of chiropractic in general and maybe bust some of my preconceived notions here.
I love that, Daniel. You didn't go far enough. We don't just crack backs and break backs. We're cracking necks, like you see in the movie. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. But people have that. They have that connotation, or they have that thing probably illuminated by movies and maybe fears. And I mean, let's face it, when you go to certain chiropractors, or you see them on the movies, or you've heard of that, patients will say things like, "Oh, I love it when my chiropractor cracks my back." And for those of us, I mean, you think like you're cracking your back. It makes it sound like they're just cracking or breaking bones, and that to me just sounds horrible and painful. And why would anybody want to do that? So the whole cracking the back or the twisting of the neck like that, we see that in movies where the either the good guy or whatever goes up and does one of these things, and the person just drops down like that and dies. And we then have the connotation like that's what chiropractic is. And of course you would think, God, why would I want to do that to myself? And I got to pay for that? That sounds horrible. But yeah, if you don't mind, I would like to clarify what chiropractic is. And I think I've got a great thing right here in the background. I don't know how well that shows up. That's called the neuropathylator. And essentially, I'll just go over and be a teacher. I'll see if I can keep myself in here.
We got you.
Essentially, Daniel, what it is we're working on the central nervous system, and that's going to be the brain and the spinal cord. Now, we're going to keep it real simple, but the central nervous system is that nervous system that's in the center, okay? That would be your brain and your spinal cord. Like all vertebrates, all mammals who have a vertebral column, we're the same. We've got a skull that houses the brain, and its job is to protect the brain. Well, it also holds your eyeballs and your face on, but it really is a great way of protecting this onboard computer. And then off of that, we have these movable segments. It's like a column of bone. There's 24 movable segments from your neck all the way down to your lower back. And inside that column of bone, you have your spinal cord. That's the central nervous system. Now, if something irritates that, whether it's a tumor, God forbid, a bulging disc, I hope you don't have one of those, or maybe even just a vertebral misalignment. When a vertebra like this shifts even just a little bit out of alignment, it can irritate either the spinal cord itself or one of the nerve roots that leave the back, exiting out the back, the spinal cord, and goes down the shoulders, arms, and hands, or the nerves that come out the lower back and go down the legs into the feet and the toes. That system, since it's not in the center, it's peripheral to that. That's called the peripheral nervous system. And if those nerves here at the center or anywhere is irritated, it's going to cause a problem with a nerve. Well, if you're speaking Latin, you would call that a neuropathy, right? So a peripheral neuropathy would be a nerve that's in the peripheral nervous system, usually ones that run down the arms or run down the legs. But check it out. This is where chiropractic's root is from 1895. If we find that somewhere in this vertebral column that there's some sort of twist or misalignment in those vertebrae, well, it can irritate the spinal cord. And if those nerves that exit the spinal cord go to the heart or the lungs or down the arms, well, then you're going to have problems wherever those nerves go to. So in a nutshell, chiropractors aren't really about the back, but rather we're about the nervous system, both the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And so remember that the peripheral nervous system, and you know this, but part of the peripheral nervous system is the autonomic nervous system. Think of it as the automatic nervous system. It's that part of the nervous system that controls things automatically, like heart rate, pulse, digestion, immune system. Well, those are all connected to nerves in one way or the other as well. So the chiropractor's job is to not crack the back really, but rather to make sure that that whole nervous system, that thing that controls everything, is working well. That's what we do. We're known and most famous for helping with neck pain, and back pain. Also, probably you've heard that, oh, it could be good for headaches as well. But there's other things that chiropractors can help out with also. So it's a nervous system thing that chiropractors work with. We utilize the bones of the spine to realign and make sure that things function fine so that your whole body works as it should be.
That makes so much more sense than my preconception of chiropractic. So Brian, or Dr. Prax, whatever you prefer here.
It's fine either way.
Tell me, when you were going through school and you were considering a field to pursue, why chiropractic? Why not traditional medicine? What was involved in your decision-making process there?
Wow, I'll be honest with you, Daniel, just like you with your preconceived notions, that's exactly what I thought chiropractic was back in the 1990s. I went to my uncle, who back then was an exercise physiologist and a nutritionist. And I said, gee, Uncle Ron, I'm really interested in your profession or doing something like your profession. And he was the first one that turned me on to chiropractic. He's like, you might want to look into a natural medicine, a natural form of medicine, chiropractic. And I was like, chiropractic, aren't those the back doctors? Like, yeah, you really have to look into it. And I didn't get really much more other than that, because at the time I was actually studying to become a therapist. I liked working with the body. I liked working with humans. I really wanted to do something with the human body. But at the time, for one reason or the other, I got turned off. It was actually the therapist who I were working for was teaching me how to work with the body and help people with, exercise and things like that. But they didn't have, Daniel, was the juju, the juice. They didn't have the passion and the motivation and the excitement. And that's when I went a bit disheartened to my uncle, and he said, look into chiropractic. So just literally with that, I was like, I'm going to go be a back doctor, or at least I'm going to go check that out. And that's when I really, really got my eyes open to this, not a new paradigm. This has been talked about since 1895. That was when the first chiropractic adjustment was performed. That's when chiropractic was born. It's been around for a long time. But anyway, I went and I listened to the president of the college that I went to. That's the Life Chiropractic College in California. And he told the story that I just told, and he gave several examples and case studies, and things like migraines going away and people's cancers healing up, and of course sciatica getting better, and people's peripheral neuropathy, diabetes. Like, I'm like, what the heck? What have I stumbled into? But it was an amazing thing when I got the big idea, Daniel. And the big idea for chiropractic is that we don't treat anything. I don't treat peripheral neuropathy. I don't treat headaches, back pain, neck pain, sciatica. I treat the human. And that was the difference. I went, whoa, see, medicine treats the condition. Medicine treats the symptoms. And sometimes we need that. But chiropractors are more interested in finding the problem, correcting the problem, regardless of what the symptoms are or what their diagnostic code is or whatever it is. And when I got that idea, I went, wow. And the reason it works so well, not only chiropractic, but reversing neuropathy or whatever, isn't because of me. It's because we're working with the innate capacity of the body to heal itself.
Wow.
And that's why we have such a great track record and get the results that we do, as long as we hold that philosophy in here that I don't reverse neuropathy. And I spend a good chapter or two in going through the whole book about it's not me. I don't know how to grow a nerve. I don't know. Scientists can't figure out how to grow a blade of grass, but the body knows how to grow a nerve. And that's what we tap into. So that's what we call the big idea in chiropractic, that it's something way bigger than the practitioner, way bigger than even the profession of chiropractic itself. It's the universal intelligence. We don't like to say God. We're not a spiritual organization or a profession at all, but we do realize that there is a survivability index, if you will. There is something in all animated animals and plants, bacteria and viruses, that we all want to survive and pass along to the next generation. We want to survive, and that's the difference, is how chiropractors have been trained to think and respect that.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. And I had a chance to read your book, and it was resonating with me. I come from a background of exercise physiology myself, so I've always thought about just the idea of preventative medicine being very intriguing. It seems like in the world of chiropractic versus medicine, it's almost like that. We used to hear about it with like PTs versus OTs. There was like this unspoken battle almost. Why do you think that really exists? Is it because of what you just described, as far as medicine focuses so much more traditionally on treating the problem itself versus chiropractic being focused more on the underlying cause? What's the cause of maybe the misunderstanding or rift that exists there, you think?
That's an excellent question. I think it's multifactorial. Some of it lies within our profession and our own practitioners, because let's face it, it's easy to sell back pain, neck pain, sciatica. Man, when somebody's got sciatic pain running down their leg and you say, wow, I've got a natural approach to sciatica, I can fix your sciatica, that's easy to sell. And to take the extra 2 minutes or 5 minutes or however long I took to explain how the body works. And a lot of times people are like, yeah, I don't know about all that, but could you get rid of this leg pain? Yeah. So some of it, I think, has been lost over the years and the decades of chiropractors just like, I'm just going to treat the symptom because patients are already used to that. So there's that, taking extra time to explain how a body works. And then there's the other side of things from the medical side. I mean, let's face it, they're into it for helping people in a different way. Pharmacy is into making money. I mean, I'm into making money too. I need to, raise a family and all that as well. But our approaches are so drastically different. I think some of it comes from pharma, bad-mouthing chiropractors and all things natural. Some of it comes from medicine and medical doctors, and they're definitely getting better, the newer ones coming out now. But there's been quite this rift over the years of chiropractors saying, oh, all medicine is bad, and oh, all natural things are bad on both sides. And I've really come to the point where I really believe that some medicine at certain times is really good. Yeah. I can think of many times, like if I cracked my femur, I'm going to want some drugs, man. I'm not going to want a chiropractic adjustment. But that's not the time to get my back adjusted. It's not a massage time. It's like, give me some drugs, set that bone. Man, if I have an infection, or we just had my neighbor had a scare. I don't think it was a heart attack, but it's like, save my life. Give me the drugs to save my life. Do the CPR, pump me up, whatever, cut me up, whatever it takes, save my life. We can clean the stuff up later, but there's definitely a time and a place for medicine. Where it fails, and that's where Dr. Bush, who did the foreword in here, talked about, is he says, Brian, you can never medicate yourself into health. And that to me was really powerful. You'll never drug yourself healthier. And I went, wow, that's phenomenal. So there's a time and a place for medicine, and there's a time and a place for things natural as well, like supporting and prevention, etc. But where does the rift come in? I think both sides share the onus of that, and I wish more of us would get along. I wish more people would go to exercise physiologists, nutritionists, the personal trainer at the local gym, the health food store. Listen to people like Joel Salatin and the Omnivore's Dilemma. Learn how to feed themselves properly. We would need a lot less medicine, but we would still have a need for medicine. I think they ought to relegate themselves to emergency care and get out of healthcare. Save lives care, absolutely. Healthcare with medicine approach. And so there you go. I think I may have ruffled a few feathers there, but that's where the feathers get ruffled, I think.
No, I love it. And you talk a lot about in your book overall habit shifts in a lot of different areas for people. We have a society where people are very used to just being medicated. And I think oftentimes what you'll see is that folks that get medicine, they want to just stack more medicine on top of that because that's the pattern that they're in. And you're right, they come in thinking, fix this. Do you find that when you get clients, patients that come in to see you, that how hard is it to get them into the right mindset of, because one of the things you mentioned in your book, you said, hey, if you can't do this basic thing for 30 days, then let's not embark on this journey together, right? Like, so
I think absolutely. I think I might say in a little more firmer tone than that.
Yeah.
Daniel, it at some point, sometimes it is extremely hard to do that. And I think that is my most challenging part of the job, is getting someone to not only see a different route, but be willing to take action.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of members who are in the Alcoholics Anonymous, or should be, in my family, aunts, uncles, grandparents, etc. But I will borrow from them, and the term they often use is rock bottom. And they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, unless an alcoholic has hit rock bottom, they're not going to get well. If they're like kind of sort of at rock bottom, but not quite there, they're not ready here. And it doesn't matter. They say you can take the drink away from the alcoholic, but you can't take the alcoholic away. So they have to either hit rock bottom, which usually means they land in a hospital or a jail, or their wife leaves them or something. But if they're that motivated where they finally realize, dang, I messed up and I got myself here and I've got to do something about it. This is a must. I'm sick and tired of this. I've tried this and that and the other thing, and it hasn't worked at all. I need some help. If they come in like that, they've already started the healing process. Those ones are basically easy. It's those that come in. I don't even care about the skeptical ones. If they've hit rock bottom, like if we're talking about diabetic neuropathy, and if they've hit that rock bottom and they've tried umpteen different doctors and neurologists and this neurologist, and they've been to Johns Hopkins and UVA, and they've been all over the place, and they're just getting more and more meds and getting more and more sick and more frustrated, and they come into me frustrated but skeptical, all I have to do there is just talk some logic. Like, hey, listen, your body is already engineered to heal. There's obstacles in the way. All my program does is help figure out what the obstacles are. We help remove those as best as we can. We're going to add some technology to speed the natural processes that your body's already doing. And then I get out of the way and let nature take over. And when we speak that logic, they usually go, oh, that makes sense. But if you just want a natural supplement or a pill or a rebuilder or something like that to treat your symptoms, as they say in New York, forget about it.
Yeah.
I tell them, I'm just going to be the next name on a long list of other doctors who have failed you. And I don't want to be on that list. So yeah, I hit them I hit them pretty hard. Actually, I hit them pretty hard because I feel like I've only got one chance. I mean, they'll go to umpteen different medical doctors, right? Like I talk about in the book, the real doctors. They'll go to umpteen different real doctors and go all over the place. Me, chiropractor, I got one chance. They're not going to go to the next chiropractor and the next one and acupuncture. I got one chance, I feel like, for all alternatives. So they got to be in, or it sounds crazy, or out. So that is tough.
Makes sense. And it sounds like, and I think you and I talked about this a little bit before too, but you're really big on mindset in general, right? So when we think about overall health, talk about when you're walking someone through this journey, some of the things that you're doing to help strengthen their mindset, and what role does that play in the results that they're going to see?
Huge, man, huge. Well over 51% for sure. If we're under 49, if we're under 50%, like 49%, like I'm not quite there, it's probably seriously not going to work. It's not going to work as well. It's not going to be as efficient. But if I can utilize tools and levers, and maybe buttons or whatever to help get in their head so that they decide themselves, again, I'm sick and tired of what I'm dealing with, or I'm really looking forward to having that. Psychologically, humans are like all other animals, dogs and horses and mules, right? We're either going to run toward a stick or we're going to run away from a whip, right? So we're either fearing pain or we're desiring pleasure. So it's one or the other. What I don't like to really crack the whip, because usually people have beaten up themselves so much that they're already downtrodden. But what I do is I spend time figuring out what it is that they're now not able to do due to this, that, or the other condition that they have. So I hear you, Mrs. Jones. You have, like, I literally had a lady the other day. She says, I said, tell me about your neuropathy. What does it feel like? She goes, it feels like, and she just said barbed wire. She had quite the southern accent. It was barbed wire. And I'm like, what? Bob.
Sounds like where I grew up.
Yeah. And so I said, so to come again, she goes, and her daughter had to translate. She said, she's saying barbed wire. Oh, okay. So it feels like you have barbed wire in your feet. And she goes, yep. I was like, whoa, that seems extremely painful. What are you not able to do now because of this barbed wire that you were able to do before?
Yep.
And she goes, oh man, I used to love to hike, walk. I would love to go watch my granddaughter play softball. I can't even get out of the car and walk more than 30 steps because my feet hurt. I can't watch my granddaughter play softball. This is the most meaningful thing for me. I was like, what else? She goes, well, I used to garden. I can't garden anymore. I used to love taking care of my plants and my flowers and all that. And nobody's taking care of those. And that's something I can't do. I was like, what else? What about around the house? Vacuuming, forget it. Cleaning laundry, basic chores around the house. I'm like, who does that? She goes, my husband does that. I was like, how does that make you feel? It makes me feel terrible. I don't want, he's got his own problems. And now he's got to do the work of two, and I can't even do what I need to do. So we just really dive deep on those things. And then at the end of it, I say, well, listen, I say, if we can help you get out to the softball field, be able to do the laundry and the normal chores at home, get in your garden, be able to hike, be able to walk again. If we could do that, what would that mean to you? And you see, that's the mindset. Now, I almost always get something like, it would mean the world. It would mean everything. You don't even know what it would mean. We get those sort of things. And so when I talk about things that need to be done that might be scary, like lifestyle changes, like we're going to need to make some dietary changes, or in your case, a dietary overhaul. We're going to need to cut out sugar and dairy and wheat. And once I bring all that stuff in, they're like, and I go, hey, you want to watch softball? You want to get back in the garden? I mean, not patriarchally like that, right, but like, we're here to get you back watching the games. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to get back into the games? Hey, you already tried all the medicine. You've got the best doctors and the best that medicine has to offer. What else are you going to do? I can get you on the softball field. When you relate it like that, they'll go, oh, because they're going for the carrot, Daniel. And the carrot is what you got to focus on. Just focus on the carrot, and we'll deal about these little things later.
Yeah.
That's what works.
I would imagine when you get people started in this journey, and you can talk a little bit about the process of what it looks like to reverse neuropathy, right? But when you get people moving in this process, I would imagine it starts with still a lot of reservation and even skepticism of like, I've tried everything. I don't know if this is going to work. But is there a specific point that you see where they start to think, wow, like I'm starting to see some improvements. I'm starting to feel better overall. Like talk about like when does that typically happen for people, and what does that point look like?
Usually at or before 1 month.
Okay.
We always reevaluate at a monthly interval. So 1 month and month 2 and month 3. And then we do the big reevaluation at month 3. But usually, I'll tell you what, behind the scenes, pulling the curtain back, what I'm goaling for is them to say, I'm at least 25% better in 1 month. I'm not going to tell you that we get it every time.
Right.
And I'm also not going to tell you that we get this one where the guy come in 1 week, he goes, I'm 80% better. So I barely did anything on the guy. And maybe it was his mind. It was probably some dietary changes. I got a wonderful video from this man, a testimonial. And he says, I'll never go back to eating how I was eating. So we just really cleaned up his diet. And thanks to his wife, I think, she's the one that cooks the food. I think she was all in. She's like, that's it, we're changing. And I gave them a list of foods that they could eat and a list of foods to avoid. And I think she just like shoved things away, and I'm going to do this. And she followed it to a T, and she put it in front of him, and he ate it. And within a week, he was like 80% better. And seriously, in the last 3 months, he got like 5% better or 10%. So he went from 80 in the first week, and then the rest of it, he got the last 10%. So he got all the way up to 90% better. This guy had a 95% loss of the nerves in his feet.
Wow.
So that's a rare one. We don't always get them that good in a week, but usually within 1 month, we're seeing at least a 25% improvement.
Okay. What are when it comes to dietary changes, what's the biggest thing that you see with people, the change that they have to make? If you had to put a finger on that.
If I had to pick one, sugar.
How important is that beyond just peripheral neuropathy? Because I would imagine you deal with a lot more than just peripheral neuropathy.
Yep.
How big of an impact is sugar into all other areas of our health and how our body is functioning properly?
Yep. And I can put a little asterisk if I could. This is sneak in a little bit as well. So it's sugar and things that turn into sugar. So that would be your simple carbohydrates, your refined carbohydrates, because although on the package it just says carbs and maybe there's not any sugar added to your bread, pasta, bagels, things like that, it's not what you eat, it's what your body does with what you eat. So sugar and simple refined carbohydrates, I would say. And if how does it affect all other things? I'll just say all other human ailments. If I had to pick one thing, and in the book I talked about some amazing technology, this thing called a rebuilder, and we use infrared lights. We use some great supplements that help boost nitric oxide, and we can, unpackage those things as well. But if you made me pick one thing, I could write my book here in one page. I would just put one word, and that would be, or 3 words: get rid of sugar. 4 words.
I thought you were going to say cut out sugar. So I was like, well,
yeah, that's better. That's better. Cut out sugar. That's huge. I've seen the most incredible changes with that. So for your listeners or watchers here, if there's any one thing you can do, cut out sugar. That would be the most important message of today.
That's so important. I used to tell, and oftentimes, because I have a personal training background, when I would get clients in, understanding that they're going to overhaul their whole diet, like you said, if they're not at a point of rock bottom, is rare. And so it was always that conversation of, let's focus on one thing. And one of the first questions I would always ask them is, do you drink soda? And if we can start there and just cut out that one thing, let's get rid of that. And it was amazing that people that would make that change how big of a difference they would feel from just that one piece. And then you start the snowball effect of it's kind of addicting. They're like, wow, I feel so much better doing this. Now, what other habits can I implement to help myself feel even more healthy, right?
Perfect. And if you maybe sometimes there's certain personalities that might like a challenge, like see if you can do this. And if you give them an alternative, I don't have one around right now, but oftentimes I'll drink just like some sparkling water. What's the kind they make? They make them in different. Zevia is an example. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. It's a soda, but it's made with stevia, so there's no sugar in it at all. And so if they're like, I gotta have my Coke, like you could recommend Zevia, or you could recommend any other of these sparkling water things, so that they could just have something to drink and replace it with. Oftentimes that might be it. And if you give them a challenge, I challenge my patients to a month, but even like if you are able to do it for 1 week, your people anybody would start feeling results within 1 week if they gave up soda. And then, like you said, once they start building, like, oh, dang, this is amazing. I do feel better. What else can I do? And I've also lost 3 pounds this week. I want more of this. And then you can say, well, now you might want to look at this. And then how about that? And now that you're there, consider this. And you're right. Sometimes incrementally. Unfortunately, for a lot of my patients, they're at the point where they're not at the cliff's edge, like they're over the edge. They're literally over the edge. And I got to reach down over that cliff and grab them up and say, we're going to help you out. Where were you 5 years ago, 10 years ago? But so they have to do, a lot of my patients have to do an all out, last ditch effort, pull the rudder back or whatever the case might be. But at your point, when they come into the gym, they're usually, they're still up and walking. I got people coming in wheelchairs and walkers and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, no, and that's good. That kind of leads me into my next question too, to the point of, do you ever get folks that come in to see you that they make all these changes, they do exactly what you're saying, but they don't see the results?
Sure, I do. Yeah, absolutely. So those folks, you usually have to dig deeper and figure out what's the underlying cause, and it's rarely it's usually multiple other factors, and that's where the good exam and the consultation and listening comes in. It's why I spend so much time with the patient on day one. It's figuring out what are all the possible causes. It could be a spinal misalignment. It could be if we're talking about neuropathy, it could be a herniated disc complicated by diabetes. I have a lady who's on her 25th round of chemotherapy. Wow. It could be related to that. It is in this case. There could be many other factors. In the book, I talked about a woman who was exposed to black mold. So it could be environmental. It could be thought process. Usually it's like a myriad of factors, and rather than just one, like it's your diabetes, it's usually multiple things. But yeah, for those people who, when we do the 1 month evaluation, how much better would you say you are? 0. Almost always, not always, but almost always, I then go into, okay, tell me, how would you grade yourself? If 100% means I'm following Prax's recommendation 100% on that diet, what would you say? Well, probably about 50. Okay. I don't try and beat them up too much, but like, where are you off? Well, to be honest with you, doc, I haven't changed at all. Okay. Let's go number 2. How often are you using the equipment? I'm recommending twice a day, 30 minutes each area, so up to an hour twice a day. How much are you doing that? And they're like, yeah, 1, sometimes 2. Okay. And I recommended those stretches. How would you grade yourself on the stretches? I haven't been doing those. Okay. So you can't say that Dr. Prax's program isn't working, but you can say that Mrs. Smith isn't working Dr. Prax's program. So most often those are people just not following the program. So then we have to bring back out the big goal. Don't forget softball, garden, right? We want to get in the garden, and you spend a lot of money for this. You want to get your money's worth out of this. You spend a lot of time. I'm going to challenge you to 30 days.
Yep.
So that's it. Then the next one would be, they're like 100%, 100%, following it, following everything to a T. And literally, I believe them. Some people really do. Then in that point, if we're at 1 month, they go, good, keep doing it. I want you to do it 3 times a day and maybe try this and maybe make a couple other changes. But usually for those people, it's just wait. Let's just be patient. There's been a lot of damage. It took you 25 years to get here. We're only 30 days in. We're
Yeah.
still fine. I'm not worried about it. Let's just keep your nose to the grindstone.
Yeah.
If we get to 3 months and they really are hitting it to the T, by that point, I may have started pulling up some labs. Maybe there's something I missed. Maybe they have a B12 deficiency. They're low on vitamin D, or they have an autoimmunity, or maybe it's just something I missed. But that's why we do the reassessments on a periodic basis to see how things are progressing or lack thereof.
Yeah. I love your approach. It reminds me so much of a coach that's working with an athlete throughout a season. You make adjustments along the way, and you're getting to know them from more than just what their signs and symptoms are. You're getting to know them on a personal level, and all these sorts of from a holistic standpoint, getting to know them so that you can walk them through this. I love that. You talk about having to be consultative, and I'm going to kind of take a sidestep here for a second.
Sure.
But outside of chiropractic, how have you seen that skill that you've had to implement over several years play into other areas of your life? As far as you mentioned, listening effectively, that was something that I had to learn how to do. I read a lot of people skill books after college, had to work on those areas. So talk about maybe just outside of chiropractic, what those skills have done for you.
Boy, that's really helped. Just the listening skills and having that flexibility. And I would also say empathy. And I've learned a lot. I look back at a lot of the things that I did and said, and sometimes I feel that God has graced me by giving me another chance, and other times I didn't get graced. But yeah. I had a patient recently who came back in, and I read my notes from 3 years ago and what I told her, and I almost went, oh my God, I went way over the top. If you can't do this diet, I can't accept you into the program. And that was like my language at that point, only 3 years ago, like when the book came out, and maybe it was written pretty hardcore as far as that goes. And so now I've learned to be quite a bit more empathetic.
Yeah.
I also believe that God has given me certain things to deal with, like some pretty severe back pain. And I've had some pretty severe shoulder pain lately. And I also experience a lot of things vicariously through others, patients of mine, like my neighbor who just had this heart attack scare. A friend of mine whose sister was in a near fatal car accident. And those to me hit really hard, like, wow, even for as healthy as I am and proactive as I am, and positive thinking and meditating and all of these things and how good I am, somebody could come careening right off the road, jumping over the median and hit me right in the car and send me down a ditch like my friend's sister. And I'm like, holy moly, I need to like maybe notch my ego down a little bit, maybe have a bit more empathy for people and the stories where they're at. So circling back around, those things help me a lot in my outside relationships. This skill set that I'm developing up to this point developed, it definitely helped me outside, and I'm nowhere near perfect. I'm trying to get as close to perfection as I can, but I'm not batting 1,000 by any stretch of the imagination. But it certainly has helped me. A lot of the books that I do affect me inside my practice, but I'm still practicing outside of the practice and inside as well. But that skill set has really helped out with raising children and other professional and personal relationships too.
Yeah, no, I'm always curious to ask about that, because all of these episodes that I do, I feel like that inevitably comes up, and the listening skills, the empathy, those are things that circle back around. I had a girl on here who her name's Delisha. Her podcast was also phenomenal. But one of the things that she said in there was people, they come to you with certain perspectives based on their lived experiences. And the way that she framed that about people just we have different lived experiences based on a number of different things. And so I think when you're aware that those can be different from yours, it can help you be a little bit more empathetic and seek to understand versus just, and I probably used to do it early on in coaching too, when I would get, mad at a kid for whatever reason. And, 3 years later, I was thinking, oh my gosh, that was, what an idiot. Right. But on my part. So it's
That's so true. Everybody has their own story, their own backstory, like we'd read in a favorite or a not so favorite character in a book. But any of the good books go about telling the backstory and how somebody gets to where they're at. And I think about, like, even just today, I have some frustrations working on some statistics in my business, and I can't quite get it right, and I'm so stressed out about that. And then I got this, and I got this podcast I got to do, and I'm stressing out over this. I mean, a lot of these things are first world problems, but I think about if I like to think of myself as a pretty put together, pretty calm person. I've got a lot of things. I got a pretty level mindset. Meditating and staying ahead of the game and being proactive. And of all the things and frustrations that are going on inside of my head, what about people who had a harder upbringing? I had a pretty good upbringing. There's some things I could complain about, but I had a pretty good upbringing. I had food on my plate 3 meals a day. I had access to good shelter over my head, a lot of good stuff. I did not have an alcoholic father that beat me and all these other horrible stories. So given that where I'm at and what's constantly seems to be stressing me out, man, everybody has that going on. So as I walk down the street, not always, but as I walk down the street, I'm like, wonder what his story is, or somebody's grumbling or yelling or cursing or whatever. And I'm like, wow, somebody must have, as my favorite motivational speaker Zig Ziglar said, somebody must have kicked his cat. And everybody's dealing with some of their own BS, right?
Totally.
Their own belief system. That's what I mean.
There you go. No, that's great. I kind of coming back here to a second. I maybe could have placed this question a little bit earlier, but it was one that I did want to ask you. Your focus is on reversing neuropathy. That's what you've said, that it's just an area that you're gifted in, right? Like you've done really well with this. What was it that made you hone in or focus in specifically on that?
Yeah. I started out in PT, physical therapy. Like I said, I got disheartened and moved into the chiropractic field, got the big idea of chiropractic, got excited about it. And throughout most of my career, from early on up until about the age of 40 or 45, about 45, I'm 52 right now, but up until that age, I was basketball. I was really into basketball. But had multiple injuries, and most of those were ankles, classic basketball thing, twisting ankles and spraining them and all that, and back pains and injuries. So early on, I took an interest not only in the spine for my own selfish reasons, and ankles for my own selfish reasons. I would twist my ankle, I would go to the chiropractor, go to the physical therapist, get them worked on, get them rehab. And that was my thing. That wasn't the garden for me or watching my grandkid play softball. It was a get me back on the basketball court, get my ankle whole again. So for that reason, I took a particular interest in feet and ankles. And so early on, I took outside of my school career, I took extremity adjusting. I took a course in becoming a certified chiropractic sports physician. So I learned all about injuries and caring for injuries and working with the athletic trainers and the physical therapists. So I had quite an interest in feet. And so I started having people, I became known as, I guess, the foot guy, but I was thinking always acute foot guy. But I started getting people talking about this burning and then it's tingling in my feet. Now, all these signs and symptoms coming on about feet. And a friend of mine over in the state of Washington was doing this neuropathy thing and helping people out with neuropathy. And so I put those two together and I said, well, that's something I really enjoy doing. I just need to expand. And back then in 2010, I didn't know anything about treating diabetic neuropathy. I didn't even know how to spell it back then, but just kidding. I knew how to spell it. But so that's really kind of where it started. He piqued my interest and I already had this this thing going with feet and ankles is sort of a funny thing to be excited about, but professionally I was. And then I just started learning more, and it's just like, let's go down that rabbit hole and see where that leads me. And because of the chiropractor's philosophy and how well a body works if you just remove obstacles and add a little bit of simple things like diet and exercise, and then maybe some high-tech stuff like the equipment that we talk about, the results were just astonishing to me, and they still are. They're just amazing.
That's awesome. This is great. I could ask you so many more questions. I thoroughly have enjoyed the conversation today, Dr. Prax. And I know one last question, just as we kind of wrap up here, maybe I'll ask you two more, but there's going to be people that listen to this and inevitably are thinking, okay, now he's got my wheels turning. Should I keep going to my regular physician? Should I give a chiropractor a chance? I mean, what would you say maybe to those people?
It depends on what's going on. If one of your listener, I keep saying listener, observer, watcher,
it could be a listener, could be an observer,
listener, observer. If they have neuropathy, then one of the things is, what would I recommend? Couple things that you could do is, you could look up my YouTube channel, just type in Dr. Brian Prax, and I have a ton of videos on healing, which a lot of those specifically have to do with peripheral neuropathy. So that would be a great channel to go to. Another thing is I've gotten, of course I'm biased on this, and guys, I'm not making a ton of money on selling my book or whatever, but I mean, I just like give the secrets in the book. I talk about what it is that I do in the office to reverse neuropathy. So that one's called Reversing Neuropathy. You can just go on to Amazon and get it there. It's like $19, $20 or something like that. Going to your doctor, if you have peripheral neuropathy, unless they're an out-of-the-box thinker, you're just going to get more gabapentin, Lyrica, amitriptyline, gabapentin. You're just going to get more drugs to cover up your symptoms. And I say to patients, if that's working for you, then keep working it. But if you're sick and tired of taking meds and not getting any results, then you could choose a different path. So just for you to know, this would be the one thing I would like your observers to get out of today. And that is there is another way. There is another way other than just trying to drug your symptoms. That's kind of like putting your hands over your ears because your engine is making a squeaking sound. It's because the oil is running low, right? Listen to the symptoms, try and respond to the symptoms rather than just covering them up. That's my gripe with medicine when it comes to neuropathy. They're just covering up. They're not even really that good. They're attempting to cover the symptoms.
Yeah, love it. Fixing the root of the problem, getting your body to heal itself. I love the mindset. I will say, the book, I have it right here, well worth the $19, $20, whatever it is. And Brian, when I was reading through this, I was thinking to myself too, even if I'm somebody that doesn't have neuropathy, I'm getting a lot of value out of this because there are so many of these changes that could be applied, and overall, for your overall health, you're going to feel a lot better. So I would highly recommend the book, checking out Dr. Prax, checking out your YouTube channel, and no, really appreciate you joining today. This was awesome. How else can people find out more about you?
Well, you can Google anybody or anything at this day.
We live in that age, don't we?
Yeah. If you want to go to Google, I mean, I can sit here and drop my phone number and all that stuff. I'm happy to do that. But I would just say Google Dr. Brian Prax. You'll see. You can get my a link to the Amazon for the book, or get onto my website. It's called chroniccarecharlottesville.com. But who's going to remember that? Just Google Dr. Brian Prax, and you can find me.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Prax, thanks again so much for your time today. This was awesome. Really enjoyed it. And looking forward to hearing more more success stories that come out of your practice and everything you got going on there. So appreciate it.
I think it'd be really fun. I wish we had more time. At some point one of the things you talked about off camera was to share some success stories. So we talked about barbed wire lady, and I talked about the mold, the black mold, the lady who was exposed to black mold. I think it might be fun for us to do some sort of follow-up and maybe share some stories and what we can learn from that as well.
I would love that. That would be awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. We really enjoyed it, and I know people are going to get a lot of value out of this.
Oh, I really hope so. Thank you so much for taking the time, Daniel.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right.